The weekend had finally arrived, and my parents had left me home alone for the first time. I was a typical teenager, excited to have the house to myself. But as the sun dipped below the horizon on that Friday evening, a creeping sense of unease settled in. The house was old, a Victorian relic passed down through the generations. It felt different without my parents' reassuring presence. Its time-worn walls whispered secrets of generations long past, and the creaking floorboards beneath my feet echoed with history. The wind outside howled with an eerie haunting tone, and the darkness cast long sinister shadows throughout the empty rooms. It was a moonless night, and the only source of illumination was the faint glow of a flickering street lamp through the heavy curtains. To ease my growing discomfort, I ordered in a pizza, hoping a full stomach and some binge-watching would help pass the time. But when the delivery guy arrived, he cast an awkward, lingering gaze at the quiet, dimly lit house before leaving. His apprehension only deepened my unease. As I settled into the living room with my pizza, the ominous creaks and groans of the house only intensified my sense of vulnerability. It felt as if the very walls were alive, whispering secrets from the past, and the ticking of an antique grandfather clock added to the eerie atmosphere. Every whisper of the wind and every inexplicable sound seemed like an invitation for my overactive imagination to conjure up nightmares. Hours dragged on, and I could no longer deny the growing apprehension that gnawed at me. I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door behind me, just as my parents had instructed. My phone provided a lifeline to the outside world, a way to call my parents in case things got too creepy. I texted some friends, trying to keep my mind occupied, but the ones who promised to come over had suddenly cancelled due to other commitments. With the lights out, I lay in my bed, the shadows dancing on the walls. The sense of isolation was palpable. Just as I was beginning to think that my anxiety was all in my head, I heard it. A faint, ghostly whisper that seemed to originate from the darkest corner of the room. My heart raced as I strained my ears to listen more closely, but the voice was elusive, and its words remained incomprehensible. I hid beneath the sheets and wrapped my pillow around my head, believing that what I heard must have all been in my head. The unease escalated as night pressed on, and I contemplated calling my parents. But before I could dial their number, the voice grew louder and clearer. "Come back," it hissed, chilling me to my core. My room felt like a trap, and I knew I needed to leave. As I scrambled for the door, a bone-chilling growl emanated from the other side, freezing me in my tracks. The doorknob rattled violently as if something were trying to force its way in. Panic coursed through me as I realised that something was wrong. Something unnatural and malevolent was inside my house. With trembling fingers I dialed 999 and described the terrifying events unfolding in hushed tones. The operator on the other end did her best to keep me calm as I recounted the whispering voice, the ominous growl, and the relentless assault on my bedroom door. But as I spoke, a sense of frustration and disbelief overcame me. It felt like the operator wasn't taking me seriously. She questioned me repeatedly, asking if it was some kind of prank, if I'd been watching a scary movie, or if I'd been drinking or taking any substances. Her skepticism was evident in her tone, and it only added to my mounting panic. "Sir, we take these calls very seriously," she said, though her voice lacked any kind of conviction. "But you have to understand, it's Halloween weekend, and we get a lot of prank calls from teenagers around this time of year." Tears welled up in my eyes as I pleaded for help, trying to convey the sheer terror I was experiencing. The doorknob continued to rattle, and the sinister growl persisted, a menacing background chorus to our conversation. "I promise you, it's not a joke. I don't know what's happening, but something's in my house and it's trying to get me," I stammered, my voice trembling. The operator's tone remained skeptical, but she finally dispatched an officer to check out the situation. I ran to my closet, clutching my phone, praying for the police to arrive before whatever was outside my door broke in. As I listened to the clock ticking and the bizarre noises outside my closet, I wondered if I had made a mistake calling the police. The fear of not being taken seriously gnawed at me, and I was worried that they wouldn't find anything when they arrived. The sirens of the police cars finally pierced the night, and a surge of relief washed over me as the rattling of the door suddenly ceased, as if whatever was on the other side had become spooked by the police presence. But my sense of dread persisted as the officers conducted a thorough search of the house. The whispering voice and the growling had ceased, but the ominous atmosphere still clung to every corner of the darkened rooms. The police officers examined every nook and cranny, looking under the beds, behind doors, and even in the closet. Yet just as I feared, they found nothing unusual. Their expressions conveyed a mixture of confusion and annoyance, and their words dripped with skepticism. "Kid, we searched the entire house," one of the officers said, his tone impatient. "There's nothing here. Are you sure you didn't imagine all this?" I was on the verge of tears, unable to convince them of the sheer terror that had gripped me moments ago. The officers eventually left, chalking up the bizarre events to an overactive imagination and perhaps a vivid dream. But the memory of that night continues to haunt me, and the skeptical response of the police left me with more questions than answers. I never spent another night alone in that house, always wondering if there was something more lurking there that night. Something that had escaped the notice of the authorities. Something that whispered in the dark and rattled the doorknob, just waiting for an opportunity to strike. The old house, with its ancient secrets, remained a place of mystery and dread in my memories. The summer had finally arrived, and I had returned home from college. It was a welcome break from lectures, exams, and dorm life. My parents had decided to take a long-awaited vacation, leaving me alone in our suburban home for part of the summer. It was an opportunity for me to just unwind without the thoughts of exams and studying, but the tranquility of the empty house was about to unravel into a chilling nightmare. The first few days were blissfully uneventful. I revelled in the peace and quiet, sleeping in and enjoying the freedom to do as I pleased. My days were filled with lazy afternoons by the pool and evenings with friends. However, as the first week drew to a close, an eerie sense of isolation began to set in. One evening, while I was watching a movie in the living room, the floor above me creaked ominously. I dismissed it as a typical sound of an old house, but the creaking persisted, growing louder and more distinct, as if someone were moving about in the rooms above. I muted the TV, straining to hear. The footsteps, now unmistakably real, continued echoing throughout the house. Fear gnawed at me and I froze in place, not knowing what to do in this situation. Should I call the cops? Or what if it's just a false alarm? I quickly grabbed my phone before summoning the courage to investigate the source of the sound. I crept up the stairs, holding my breath. The footsteps led me to the guest bedroom. I cautiously pushed open the door and was met with an empty room. But a window was wide open, curtains rustling in the night breeze. My heart pounded, and I knew that I had closed all windows in the house when my parents left, and I never opened any of the windows anyway. I rushed to the window and peered outside. Nothing. No sign of an intruder. A sense of unease settled in, and I locked the window, convincing myself that it must have been one of my friends who had left it open from one of the previous nights by mistake. But as I turned to leave, I spotted a piece of paper on the guest bed. It was a handwritten note that read, "I'm home, my dear." My blood ran cold. I had no siblings, and all my friends were at home. My friends liked to play pranks, but this just felt all too real. I couldn't dismiss the unsettling feeling that someone had gained access to the house. Panic overcame me, and I unlocked my phone to call the police. But as I fumbled with the digits, a soft haunting tune filled the air. I froze. The eerie melody was coming from downstairs. With trembling hands I dialed 911, whispering my situation to the operator as I tiptoed back down the stairs. The eerie melody was coming from the basement. I don't know what drew me to do it, but I quickly swung the basement door open and began descending the stairs. The music growing louder, echoing in the old, cold, dimly lit underground. Still on the line to the police, the dispatcher assured me that officers were on their way. But time seemed to slow as I reached the bottom of the stairs. The music led me to an old, dusty record player sat alone in the centre of the room, appearing to have been seemingly untouched for years. As I gazed at it and extended my hand to turn it off, the music abruptly stopped, leaving me in a tense silence. And then from the shadowy corner of the basement a raspy voice whispered, "Welcome back." I gasped, and my phone clattered to the ground. Panic surged through me as I raced up the stairs, slamming the basement door behind me, the latch securing it. As I slouched against the door, barring it with my weight, I heard the shuffling of footsteps ascending the basement stairs. My heart raced as I dug in to brace the door with all my strength. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could hear my own ragged breaths as I strained against the door. The doorknob began to rattle, the sound of a malevolent rhythmic beat, as if whatever was inside the basement was trying to get out. I knew I had to hold the door until the police arrived, my only defence against the unknown presence on the other side. But whatever was on the other side became more agitated and angry, bashing the door and projecting me back and forth with each strike. But finally, amidst all the banging, I could finally hear sirens in the distance. The police could hear my frantic screams within the house and immediately barged down the door, guns drawn. But as they entered the house, it was as if a veil had been lifted. The banging from the basement door stopped abruptly, as if what had happened was all a figment of my imagination. But I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. The police descended into the basement to find it empty. No sign of whatever or whoever was on the other side of the door, and the record player seemed to vanish into thin air, with a note upstairs along with it. The police could see the terror on my face, but with no sign of anything I had mentioned, they were sceptical of what I told them, and they were obliged to warn me about the trouble I could get in for wasting police time. I know what I heard that night, and it was definitely not just a figment of my imagination. That summer, my idyllic return home had turned into a nightmarish ordeal. The experience left me scared, and I couldn't wait to leave the house behind when summer ended. Though I have since returned to college and none of the events have repeated themselves, the memory of that fateful summer and the chilling night alone in my own home have stayed with me forever.